What's up, guys, and welcome to a special Saturday edition of Player Pool. We're looking at two games with heavy playoff implications, and I'm going to break down how to play it on the DraftKings two-game slate right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at PumaCom here with Heatseeker Sports, and you're watching Player Pool. I got a special two-game Saturday edition of this episode. We're looking at the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Houston Texans. We got a 41.5-point total in that one with Houston as 3.5-point dogs. And we got the Baltimore Ravens versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we're looking at a 41.5-point total in that one with Pittsburgh as 6.5-point dogs. So we got two relatively low-scoring games, and they're all four teams are vying for playoff positioning, and it's actually a 44.5-point total in that Pittsburgh game, 41.5 in that Kansas City game. So two games with pretty big playoff implications. The Chiefs, if they win and Buffalo loses, they'll clinch a first-round bye and first overall in their conference. So if the Pittsburgh Steelers and Baltimore Ravens, I think Baltimore is they're basically vying for the division right now. Baltimore still has a chance to win it. Pittsburgh is leading the division now, so Baltimore needs this win. And it's a situation where Pittsburgh is missing their top weapon in George Pickens. Baltimore is healthier than the Steelers, but both teams are dealing with some injury situations, and I'll get into that in a minute. Before I do that, make sure to hit the like button. I'm looking for 30 likes to put out my favorite picks in the chat later on when we get closer to lock and get some more information. And make sure to hit the subscribe button because I'm at about 1,350 right now. I'm trying to get to 1,400 before the end of week 16. So if you guys can hit that subscribe button, I definitely appreciate that. Going to have some underdog picks for this slate, and I'll get into that breakdown a little bit later on. And for now, let's take a look at some of the aspects of this slate. I'm going to go over to the injury situation first. We can start by looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers depth chart. We'll dig into that game first. Justin Fields is out. That's not really significant. Fields hasn't really played a role in a while. He's been doing some of the special situations where he'll run the ball in certain situations, but besides that, Fields has been MIA since Russell Wilson took over as the quarterback. The big thing is George Pickens is out. Pickens being out is significant for this entire offense. Russ Wilson plays a lot worse without Pickens, and it gives opportunity for some of these secondary receivers like Mike Williams, Van Jefferson, and Calvin Austin. Calvin Austin has been the guy that's benefited the most from Pickens being out so far. Pat Freiermuth should also benefit from Pickens being out. That plays a role in my underdog picks this week for Underdog Pick'em. Also will play a role in how we build our lineups this week. On the defense, we're looking at Deshaun Elliott being out. That's going to be significant for the tight ends on Baltimore. Dante Jackson is questionable. We have a lot of depth issues just in general on this defense. We got a lot of guys on IR, and Larry Ogunjobi is questionable. So some significant situation there with the defense of the Steelers. If we move on to the Baltimore Ravens, who they're playing this week, we're looking at Nelson Aguilar is out. Rashad Bateman is questionable. Nelson Aguilar being out is significant again for those Ravens tight ends, because with that safety out as well, I think that's going to be interesting for Isaiah Likely. Isaiah Likely runs some routes out of the slot. With Aguilar being out, Anthony Miller's the backup slot receiver. I think that likely is going to get a lot more opportunity in the passing game this week. He plays a role in my underdog pick 'em as well. Uh, Rashad Bateman, if he plays, he's in a good spot this week against a Pittsburgh defense that plays weaker against the wideouts. So they're allowing 26 DraftKings points a game to the wideout position, and I believe that Bateman has the better matchup depending on like who Porter is going to be shadowing. I've seen on fantasy points that they have Joey Porter shadowing Rashad Bateman. So if that's the case, then that might actually be better for Zay Flowers this week. So got some interesting situations here with the teams playing against each other in such low totals. It's going to make it a very variant type of slate where you can pick weird guys and have them hit. So these low scoring projections are always going to be interesting for who we're keeping in our player pool and who we're putting into our lineups, especially on a 2-game Saturday slate. So let's take a look. I'll go by this one positional. I usually go by game. I'll do this positional to try something a little bit different this week. Lamar Jackson has struggled against Pittsburgh. He has, I believe he's only won once against Pittsburgh. Let's take a look at his performances versus Pittsburgh. I got him teed up here. Um, so it looks like he's only won once since 2020 against Pittsburgh. Prior to that, he did well, but we're more interested in his recent performances. Last game this season that he played against them, he had 207 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He's just struggled heavily against Pittsburgh. His lowest fantasy outputs are typically against the Steelers, and that's true of this year too. If we're looking at Lamar Jackson, his game against the Steelers this year, he only had 15.88 DraftKings points. So Lamar Jackson is also going to be the highest owned quarterback on the slate, on this 2-game slate. So that is going to make Lamar Jackson an interesting fade candidate. I think he's going to be running the ball a decent amount in this game, but I do think that he's going to struggle against the Steelers in the passing game. Patrick Mahomes is in a situation like he's got an ankle injury, high ankle sprain, I believe is what they had called it, but he's not showing up on the injury report. So I'm not sure how serious it is. But the Texans are allowing 17.6 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. So that's going to set up Patrick Mahomes to have like a middling type of game. I do think that this game, the total is a little low to me. I think that this game could go over that total of 41.5 points. I do think that the way that Kansas City's defense has been struggling lately, I think they're going to be more susceptible to the pass, especially with Nico Collins. And I do think that the Chiefs will be able to answer that, obviously, with Patrick Mahomes. I think the Texans might be able to sneak one out in this game. I do think that obviously the Chiefs have been struggling just in general lately to win games. If you look at some of their recent wins, they beat Cleveland pretty handily, but they beat the Chargers 19-17. They luck boxed that one. They luck boxed against the Raiders 19-17, same score. They luck boxed against Carolina 30-27. All these games they were looking like they were going to lose, and they pulled off some ridiculous stuff in the fourth quarter, like the last series of the game or last plays of the game. Versus Denver, they luck boxed that one 16-14. They won. Tampa Bay, Tampa Bay had gone for 2 at the end of the regulation. They may have won that game against the Chiefs. So just a lot of lucky wins by the Chiefs this year, and that luck's going to run out eventually. And they're facing a good team in the Texans. The Texans obviously a playoff contender. They're in first place in their division. Texans need to win this game, though, to stave off the Colts. And Patrick Mahomes with a gimpy ankle, on top of the just the luckiness that they've had in general in winning these games. I think their luck's going to run out at some point. It's either going to be in the playoffs or it's going to be prior to the playoffs, and I would not be surprised if they end up losing this game to the Texans and we get a score higher than 41.5 points. CJ Stroud, on the other side of that, has also struggled this year. You can see in his fantasy points, last time he scored over 20 fantasy points was back in week 5 against Buffalo. So he's just struggling in general. But Kansas City has been soft versus the pass recently, and they are in a situation too. If we go over to this injury report here as well with Kansas City, you can see some of their depth issues here. We got Chamari Connor is out. He's their nickel back, so that's going to be a good situation for the slot corner or slot receiver. Jalen Watson is also, I believe he's done for the season. He's on IR, though, and he's the right cornerback. And ever since he went out, Kansas City has been pretty bad against the pass. They've been giving up, let's see, they've been giving up 18.9 DraftKings points a game to slot receivers, and that's with their starting slot corner in. And now that starting slot corner is out. They've also been giving up 15.6 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. They've been giving up 18.5 to the wideout position. That's like one of the better teams against the wideout position, but they are missing Jalen Watson, and I do think that Nico Collins is going to take advantage of this defense this week. So it's going to set things up nicely. The situation with the slot receiver against Kansas City is going to be relevant with a slate with like low totals, and no one really has that great of a matchup. I do believe that we can get an opportunity with some of these lower priced receivers. I was hoping that John Mechie would be the guy like this week that we'd be able to get like as a sneaky low owned guy, but Mechie is out this week, which sucks. So let's take a look at this injury report for the Texans. I was getting ready to tee up John Mechie as our sneaky play this week, but Mechie is out. Xavier Hutchinson and Robert Woods. I don't know which one of those guys is going to be taking over for Mechie in the slot, but if either of those guys are going to be running, usually it's Robert Woods, but I think Xavier Hutchinson has gotten a decent amount of run in the slot as well. If either one of those guys, we get word from beat reporters or whatever that they're going to be the starting slot receiver in this one, they're going to have a really good matchup against the Chiefs, who are missing, on top of that, their nickel back. So we got a good situation for whoever the slot receiver is against the Chiefs this week, and that might also benefit Schultz more this week. And Schultz already has a good matchup against the Chiefs, who are giving up a boatload of points to the tight end position. Seems like even though I'm trying to go positional, I'm going more in a game by game type of format. But Schultz has not done a whole lot this season. He did have a 17-point week a couple weeks ago against Jacksonville, but I do believe that Schultz could be used a decent amount in this game. Especially with some of those receivers on and the passing game struggling in general for Houston. They might lean on Dalton Schultz and just try to get some easy completions against a bad tight end defense, also missing the nickel back. So Dalton Schultz should be interesting this week at 3,400. If I'm looking at his ownership, let's see. Schultz is looking at about the third highest owned tight end on the slate. This is a kind of slate, too, where you could potentially use two tight ends. So keep that in mind when you're building your lineups this week. That tight ends are not out of the picture this week. I also like Freiermuth on the other side against the Ravens. Or sorry, I'm on the wrong game there. Kelsey or Gray on the other side with the what are they giving up? They're giving up 10.3, so not a great matchup for those tight ends on the other side. Going to that other game though, if we're covering the tight end position right now, Freiermuth has a good matchup against Baltimore. Baltimore's given up 13 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position, on top of the injuries that I was talking about earlier with, like Pittsburgh missing George Pickens. That's going to give, I believe, Freiermuth more opportunity on top of already facing Baltimore defense that's given up 13 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. With Pat Freiermuth, the Mark Andrews situation, like both these Ravens tight ends with Nelson Aguilar out, I think that likely is going to be in a better situation than Andrews maybe. Like I think likely runs more routes out of the slot, so maybe I think that would lead to more of an advantage for Isaiah Likely, but I do think that both of these tight ends are going to get some usage this week. I tend to lean, like Likely more though. I think that Likely is going to be a lower owned guy. On top of it, I think he could be a sneaky play for us, especially with Aguilar out. Like the backups are pretty bleak for the Ravens as far as their slot receivers. Let's take a look back at the injury chart here. So with the safety Elliott missing on top of that for Pittsburgh, we're missing Nelson Aguilar. So we got Anthony Miller as his backup, and then we're looking at guys like Tylan Wallace, who did have a decent game a few weeks ago, and we're looking at Devontae Walker. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see one of those tight ends or maybe even Tylan Wallace have a decent game in this one. So keep those guys in your player pool this week. That Nelson Aguilar being out, is gonna have impact on the way that who is going to be getting opportunities in this one. So on top of that, the wideouts versus Baltimore have been doing pretty well. Move on to wide receiver here. Wideouts have been doing pretty well. I think that Bateman could be in a good situation. He's questionable, but according to fantasy points, Bateman should be shadowed by Joey Porter. I think they're usually pretty good with their shadow projections. That's going to set up Zay Flowers to have a good game. Zay Flowers has been quiet lately. He had 11 DraftKings points last week. He hasn't had a decent week since week 9. Before week 9, he was on a pretty good tear for the season, but he hasn't done anything since week 9. And I do think that this would be a situation where against a Pittsburgh defense that's given up 26 DraftKings points a game to wideouts recently, I think that Zay Flowers is going to be interesting this week, especially if Bateman is going to be shadowed by Porter, like is being projected by fantasy points. So keep that in mind with Zay Flowers. As far as some of these other receivers, Nico Collins in probably one of the better spots this week. He's got a good matchup advantage and looks like he's going to be in a good situation. He's going to be relied upon. On top of all that, Kansas City has been, struggling with their defense recently, and they're giving up only 18.5 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. But I do think that Nico Collins can beat that matchup, and he is going to have an advantage this week. So I like Nico this week. Let's see. Pickens out. That's going to be good for Calvin Austin. Calvin Austin took advantage of it last week. 5 targets, 5 receptions, 11.5 DraftKings points. Week before that, against Cleveland, he had 4 targets, only 1 reception, 1.4 DraftKings points. But Calvin Austin, 3,800. He's been a guy that's shown upside as high as 20 DraftKings points. If we could get a 20 point week out of him, that would be a best case scenario. But I'm looking for Russell Wilson to struggle against Baltimore's defense. So I don't know that necessarily we're going to see Calvin Austin have a decent game this week, but he's a guy that we can leave in our player pool based on the George Pickens situation. Baltimore's been weak against the wideouts, but they've been playing better recently. Recently, they've only allowed the last 4 games 21 DraftKings points a game to the wideout position, 10.4 to the slot position. So they've been actually really good against the pass recently. Earlier in the season, they were a regular target for us in the passing game. So it looks like they've tightened things up. And on top of that, Wilson is already missing his top receiver. So that's going to be rough sledding for Russell Wilson as well. We can kind of maybe have less exposure to him. I'm liking the C.J. Stroud Mahomes angle the best for this week. I think that Jackson is going to struggle against Pittsburgh as he has historically. I think that Russell Wilson will struggle against Baltimore. I think that one is going to be the lower score this week. And I believe that what did we say that total was? Total on that one's 44.5 versus 41.5 for Houston and Kansas City. I wouldn't be surprised if those flip in Kansas City. Houston has the 44.5 point total. Baltimore and Pittsburgh have the 41.5 point total. So Stroud and Mahomes, probably the guys I'm most interested in quarterback. Tight end, covered that. I think it's Andrews, Freiermuth, and Likely and Schultz. A lot of tight ends in good spots this week. Back to the wideouts, we got Nico Collins, Zay Flowers. As far as the Chiefs wide receivers, Houston's been giving up 19.1 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. They've been giving up 15 DraftKings points a game to the slot. I think that's going to be decent for Hopkins and Worthy. Like, we also got Hollywood Brown back this week. Let's see. Hollywood Brown should come in relatively low owned. All right, so we're looking at Hollywood Brown at 3K this week. So, I mean, that's a steal. If he's low owned on top of that, he was out due to a shoulder injury. So, there's no issues with his legs. But the usage of Brown is going to be interesting this week. They may look to get him a decent amount of looks to try to get him ready for the playoffs. They want to get him up to speed on the offense, so he'll be useful to them in the playoffs. But at the same time, he's going to be eased in, coming off of what was expected to be a season-ending injury, but he comes back in week 16. After all the Hollywood best ball teams have pretty much been eliminated. If you got Hollywood Brown on your best ball team still and you survive this week on top of it, then you could be sitting in a good spot for week 17. But Hollywood Brown at 3K is a steal. And I think that he's going to be, when he's in the game, when he gets his opportunities, I believe that they're going to be scheming to get him the ball. So, don't be surprised if we see him, maybe not get a ton of usage, but get a lot of opportunity with the times that he's in the game. So I think that he could probably pay off that 3K salary. It'd be interesting to see how he's used, though. If he's used in the slot, Houston's given up 15 DraftKings points a game to the slot position. So that'll be interesting. I believe that Derek Stingley, he's either going to be on on Worthy or he's going to be on Hopkins this week. I don't know if it's going to be a shadow situation. Let me check over on Fantasy Points, see if they have that laid out. All right, so Fantasy Points does not have a shadow situation highlighted, but it looks like DeAndre Hopkins is going to have the best matchup against Kamari Lassiter. Marquise Brown, if he plays in the as a wideout as opposed to the slot, is going to be facing Stingley likely when he plays. So, it's going to be potentially bad matchup for Marquise Brown. But if you think that he's going to be in the slot and maybe Worthy gets kicked out to the outside to face Stingley, I'm not sure how that's going to play out. We're not going to know until we see it in action. But Marquise Brown should only see about a 20% snap share, I would guess, in this one. So he's not going to get in there a lot. But I do believe that at 3K, he's going to be worth rolling the dice on, especially if you want to pay up at running back, which seems to be the way that a lot of people are going with their lineups. We got Henry. Has struggled recently, but against Pittsburgh, in a game that they should, according to the spread, they should be controlling. Henry should get a decent amount of opportunity, especially with the passing game on the other side struggling. But Pittsburgh is the number 4 defense against the run, so Henry's going to have his work cut out for him. But as long as Henry can get volume, he usually does okay. So we'll have to see, like how much volume he gets. And remember, it's a 2-game slate. There's not any running backs that have good matchups. Like all these running backs have bad matchups. So, we could see secondary running backs do well in this one, which would be Justice Hill in this situation. I think that let's look at how many receiving yards Pittsburgh's giving up per game to the running back position, just to see if maybe Justice Hill would have an edge here. Justice Hill had a pretty big game last week. Get an idea of Pittsburgh is giving up. Looks like a decent amount of receiving yards to running backs. You're giving up 34.9 receiving yards to running backs a game with 4.3 receptions. So that'll make Justice Hill interesting if you want to pivot off of Derrick Henry. If you think that, maybe Nelson Aguilar being out, maybe some of that work goes to Justice Hill. Maybe they need to utilize him a little bit more. But Justice Hill last week had 17.8 DraftKings points a game, or eight DraftKings points in the game versus the Giants. So he's also had a few other big weeks. He had that 21.6 DraftKings point game against Buffalo, 13.8 against Tampa Bay, 14.2 against the Chargers recently, and 17.8 last week against the Giants, like I said. But if you think that the Ravens control this game, then Justice Hill probably won't get as much opportunity as we would need him to get. But he's definitely in play, with these running backs all having bad matchups and having that kind of advantage in the passing game against the Pittsburgh defense. On the other side, Baltimore is giving up the 5th most passing yards to running back position, 42.8. And both these running backs on the Pittsburgh side get opportunity in the passing game. We saw 2 targets, 5 targets, 4 targets, 5 targets, 4 targets for Jaylen Warren the last few weeks. Jaylen Warren pretty decently used in the passing game. So Baltimore being tough against the run, but vulnerable in the pass. Could be interesting for Jaylen Warren at 5,200. Najee Harris is at 5,700. And Najee has 1 target, 0 targets, 6 targets, 2 targets, 5 targets, 4 targets. So he gets a decent amount of targets too. So either one of these running backs could be in play in the passing game, especially with Pickens being out. They're going to need to rely on other pass catchers. So that could bump up the usage of Warren and Harris here. Let's see, last week with Pickens out, only 2 targets for Warren, and Harris had 1 target. So they only targeted them 3 times, but they were playing against Philly. So could be interesting to see what they do here against Baltimore. But Baltimore vulnerable against pass catching backs, and both those pass catching backs on Pittsburgh get a decent opportunity. Mixon and Pacheco, both expensive and both in bad matchups. 7,800 for Mixon. Kansas City has been good against the run all year, giving up only 15.2 DraftKings points a game. But if you do think that the Texans win this one, I think Mixon has got to play a role in that, and Mixon should outperform maybe what his projection is. And so Mixon could be in for a decent game in this one, especially they're going to want to keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. And to do that, obviously you're going to want to run the ball. Pacheco on the other side with Patrick Mahomes banged up, he might get a lot of work, and he has not had a decent week since he got back. Highest week is 16 DraftKings points, but in a game where we're dealing with a 2-game slate with every running back in a bad matchup, that could be a good situation. And that he had 15.8 DraftKings points a game against Baltimore in week 1. So Baltimore, a tough run defense he had success against, but that was prior to him, fracturing his tibia or whatever it was, and or fibula, and being out for a majority of the season. So tough to say, if Pacheco is going to be back up to speed. He had 14 carries and 13 carries his last two weeks, but did not do much with it. So just a rough situation overall for the Chiefs, dealing with that Mahomes injury, dealing with the Pacheco not doing well. They got some depth issues at the secondary, and they've just been running on fumes, trying to get these wins, squeaking out these wins at the last minute of these games recently. So they're due for a letdown spot. This would be the perfect opportunity for a letdown spot for the Texans, a team that's a little bit underrated at this point with the way that they have been performing on the offense. All right, so let's some of these secondary guys. Hunt has been getting a lot more usage than would be expected. He got 13 touches against Cleveland last week, but he also used to play for Cleveland, and they were winning 21-7. So they were probably putting Kareem Hunt in there to keep Pacheco fresh. Gave Kareem Hunt 13 opportunities last week. He didn't do anything with it. He only had 5.9 DraftKings points. It looks like he is running out of steam. They pulled him off the street, gave him a heavy workload while he was basically the only running back that the Chiefs had, and then started his decline. It looks like against Buffalo in Week 11, and he's been pretty minuscule since then. Warren, the guy I mentioned earlier, that's the guy that one of the guys that I like. I think I like Harris, Warren, and Hill the most this week, but I do think that Mixon or Henry could each pop off. I'd probably look at Pacheco as the guy that I like the least in the running back situation at 6K, and he's just struggled in general, and he's facing off against a tough Houston run defense, which is only giving up 18.1 DraftKings points a game. So let's start building this lineup. Before I do that, hit that like button. Make sure to get me to 30 likes to trigger my picks in the comment section later on. Make sure to check out that Underdog video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Get me to 1,400 subscribers. I'm 50 short of that. You want to subscribe to the channel to get the alerts when the videos come out. I'm going to be putting out a showdown video for this slate as well. Not sure which game yet. I'll probably focus on the game that is going to be the feature game on DraftKings and have the bigger player contests. So, keep that in mind. If I'm not able to get to that 30 like mark and put that show out, I will. I'll leave some comments in the comment section on maybe some showdown plays that I like. But I probably will get the 30 likes. I usually do. So in that case, you're going to want to subscribe to the channel, and you're going to want to set the alerts when you subscribe to the channel, so you know when that show comes out. It could be like any time when it comes out. It's just going to depend on what the day looks like tomorrow for me. But I do believe that it'll probably be Pittsburgh, Baltimore with the showdown show. And I do have a good idea of who I like in that game. So that's a good thing. Take one last look over here again. Make sure I didn't miss any. Tank Dell, he's just been rough recently. 6 DraftKings points, 3 draft. I mean, that could be like a cue to have Tank Dell have a decent game this week, but he hasn't been getting last 2 weeks. He's got 4 targets and 2 targets. Let's take a look real quick before we jump into building this lineup. Let's see what kind of usage he's getting. Looking for Houston here. All right, so Houston, we're looking at Robert Woods got 24% snap share count last week. Significant with Mechie being out this week. Nico Collins had 41%. Mechie had that 21%. Hutchinson had 8%. Tank Dell had 31%. So depending on where they go in the slot, that's going to have a huge impact. If it was Tank Dell in the slot, that would be huge for us. That would give us an easy guy to plug and play as a replacement for Mechie. But I don't think that they're going to move him into the slot. He's run about 26% of his routes from the slot. Mechie was at 56%. That's why I think it's going to be Hutchinson or Woods. And based on what I see here with the routes run, 24% for Woods and 8% for Hutchinson. Maybe Woods is the guy that takes advantage of that. Although Hutchinson did have 57% a few weeks back. What week was that? I think that was when Collins was probably still out. So he had like 44%, 50%, 39%, 40%, 31%. Oh, that's a Mechie. 57%, 59%, 44%, 41%, 30. I think that's all when Nico Collins was out. So I don't know if Hutchinson is going to be the guy. I think it's going to be Robert Woods, unfortunately. Hutchinson would be easier guy to plug in this situation. Robert Woods just not getting the opportunity. Let's take a look at Woods real quick. Yeah, he gets no targets. 3 targets is the highest he's gotten. I would probably just roll the dice more on Hutchinson over Woods. It's tough sledding when you have to put Woods in there. Maybe Schultz is the guy that benefits from Mechie being out and the matchup, like I said, against Kansas City. So Schultz might be the way to go there. Um, all right, so I'm going to go over now to my underdog picks. Just call that up real quick. The one I am going with is this Lamar Jackson. Got him going higher than 46.5 rushing yards. That's the number. Well, he's hit 45 rushing yards in all but one game versus Steelers. So I think you give him that extra 1.5 yards. If we can get that, that juices him up a little bit. Gets us 46.5 rushing yards against the Steelers. Pat Fryermuth, I had him going higher than 35.5 receiving yards. By the way, if you don't have an underdog account, use the promo code SEEK when you sign up for a 50% deposit match up to $1,000. You're going to want that to get in on this playoff best ball. I'm going to put out my first show pretty soon here. I meant to put it out this week. I just had not had an opportunity to do that yet. But hopefully, early next week, I'll be able to get one out right before Christmas because we know we're going to be wanting to play some best ball during Christmas. And we'll have another week of information as far as some of these teams that are going to be advancing to the playoffs. Right now, I do like a few teams like Tampa Bay is at a discount. The Rams are at a discount. You got teams like that you can get cheap. So if you got teams that you're projecting to be first round buys and have a good chance of getting to the Super Bowl that you really like, but you need to kind of cover for that later, with that first round buy and draft guys later in the draft, like the Rams or the Bucks. That's a good opportunity to do that to help get your first round buy into the next round of best ball playoffs. A little bit complicated there, but I'll explain it better, when we actually do a best ball show. The Chris Boswell, I like him going higher than 2.5 field goals because of the way that Pittsburgh, should be struggling to score touchdowns in this one. I do believe that against this Baltimore defense, maybe they're able to move the ball in between the 20s, but maybe they stall out in the red zone. And that's where I see Chris Boswell potentially getting 2.5 field goals. Isaiah Likely, I like him going higher than 29.5 receiving yards. That's juiced a little bit. I think it was 21.5 for his regular receiving yards projection. But I like Isaiah Likely, like I was saying, with Aguilar out and the safety for Pittsburgh being out. I like Likely going higher than 29.5 receiving yards. I like TJ Watt going higher than half a sack. He has hit that mark in his last 9 games versus the Ravens. He's gotten at least 1 sack. So TJ Watt, the Steelers defense has been handling Lamar Jackson all season, and TJ Watt could easily get that 1 sack. Watt had some injury concerns earlier in the week with his ankle. So, that's something to monitor, but he doesn't have an injury designation heading into the game. So, all systems go, it looks like, for TJ Watt. All right, so now let's get into this lineup. Reminder, use the promo code SEEK when you sign up for an Underdog account for 50% deposit match up to $1,000, and you get a free pick. So keep that in mind. Lamar Jackson, not really a fan of Lamar Jackson. He's going to be heavily owned, and on top of that, he's got a difficult matchup. So let's go with Stroud or Mahomes here. I'm going to go with Stroud as my quarterback. Let's go with the Texans stack here. I'm going to stack him with Schultz. I'm going to stack him with Fryermuth. With Collins. I don't know that we necessarily need to even run it. Oh no, that's another game. I'm thinking of Pittsburgh right there. I would run him back with. Let's run him back with Hopkins. especially if they're projecting Stingley to be unworthy for the most part. Like, I like going Hopkins here. Let's look at a running back situation. Let's go with Mixon here. Go for the onslaught against Kansas City. That'll get us different. I don't think many people are going to go in that direction. For my second running back, like I was talking about earlier, I think this is a week where a secondary running back is going to be in the optimal. So let's go with Warren here as our run back two. That'll give us sorry, that's not even a run back. I keep getting these games mixed up. Let's go with Warren here. I'm going to go with Shea Flowers, assuming that Bateman is going to be getting shadowed by Porter. For defense, I'm going to go with. You really can't go wrong with any of these defenses. Maybe the Texans would be the Texans and Steelers would probably be the worst defenses, but like Lamar Jackson has struggled against the Steelers, so I don't hate going with the Steelers, especially if we're looking for a cheap defense. But let's go with the Ravens. Leaves us with 5K. Leaves us with Worthy, Bateman, Justice Hill, Andrews. This is, like I said, could be a 2 tight end week. We could go Andrews or Likely in that spot. We do that, we're leaving plenty of money. We could go Freiermuth in that spot, give us another run back. Freiermuth might be the way to go. Austin, Mike Williams, if we think that Mike Williams is going to get more run with Aguilar being out. Lots of different ways we can go here, leaving plenty of salary on the table. If we wanted to get Derrick Henry in there for the volume, that's going to leave us with 2,200. So that situation, I would switch over to the Steelers. Leaves us with 3K, and that puts us in Hollywood Brown situation. So that gives us another run back going against the Texans. So, that gives you an idea of a direction to go. Let's clear that out. Let's go with Mahomes. Mahomes. If I'm going Mahomes, I'm probably going to stack him with one of his tight ends. Let's give him Hopkins first. Let's put Kelsey in there. Kelsey's going to start catching fire eventually here. So I got a double stack with Mahomes. Want to probably run it back with Mixon, because if Mahomes is forced to throw the ball, it's like a situation where they're running the ball on the other side. And we got Nico Collins. Let's get him in there. For the defense, let's go with the Steelers D. We got Mixon in there. Gonna have to go cheap as at my second running back. So let's go with Hill here. He's at 4,800. If I'm going with Hill, let's look at the wide receiver situation here. Let's go with Bateman in this one. That's going to leave us with 4,600. Leaves us with like options like Andrews, Freiermuth. I mean, it's another double tight end type of situation. Deontay Johnson, by the way, got waived. So he's another guy that's missing from Baltimore. Mike Williams, uh, Schultz, those would be the guys I'd be looking at. Isaiah Likely. It seems like a week that we're going to be able to leave money on the table. Let's put Likely in there and see what that can do for us at the running back position. That leaves us with 6,100. You get Pacheco, Harris, Warren, plenty of options there. So, a couple different ways to go there. Let's do one with Lamar Jackson. I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to put Jackson in their lineups. Jackson, I'm going to stack him with Flowers. Let's put Justice Hill in there. Let's give him a second. No, let's not do that. Let's do Likely. All right, so we got the Lamar stack. Let's run him back with Warren because I think Warren would get more usage if they're in the lead on Baltimore's side. Let's put Henry in there. Gonna go with the Chiefs D in this one. This is with 55.66 per guy. All right, so looking at these receivers, let's put Brown in just to give us a little bit of differentiation here. 68.50 per guy. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of 3 running back lineups just based on the matchups. So let's try to put Mixon in, and let's put Henry back in. Leaves us with 5,900 for our last position, and we can get like Hopkins, Worthy, Bateman, like Austin. Lot of it's going to be easy to build lineups this week. You shouldn't have any trouble. You can get expensive guys, a good mix of expensive guys and cheap guys in there. If you see that people are paying up for the running back position this week, that would be a good week to pivot to expensive receivers. The running backs don't have good matchups. As a matter of fact, let me look and see what we're looking at for ownership on some of these higher owned running backs. Looking at 57 and 52, 38 and 32 and 31 ownership for the main running backs. The expensive running backs, we got 57 and 52% ownership. For the wide receivers, the expensive wide receivers, we got 62 and 57% ownership. So, yeah, it might be better to pay up for tight end this week. Let me take a look at what Roto Grinders is optimizers is giving me for the optimal. We got Pat Mahomes, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, Calvin Austin, Zay Flowers, Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz, Chiefs D. Can't give away that last spot, but you can get an idea of what that might look like by plugging that in. But they're paying up for the running back position in the optimal, so maybe that's the way that the field goes. Let's see, highest owned guys on the slate with the 150 build. Let me share this over here. I'm getting Joe Mixon at 68% and Derrick Henry at 57%. Both those are above the projected ownership. So maybe optimizers are going to try to force in those expensive running backs. If we go into the wide receivers, Zay Flowers, 94%. Nico Collins, 83%. So I mean, it just kind of goes to how the slate's going to be. It's going to be easy to build lineups this week. So you're going to want to get different somewhere. You can either do that by leaving salary on the table. Like I said, none of these running backs have good matchups. So, you can leave a guy like Derrick Henry out of your lineup or Joe Mixon, depending on if you think one of those guys will not make the optimal. Like, I mean, this could be a week where we here, let's get a little creative here. Let's take out Henry. Let's put in Hill. So that gives us Mixon with 2 secondary running backs. Leaves us with 8,100. That gets Nico Collins. I should have had Nico Collins in there already. But that gets us Nico Collins in there. Hollywood Brown helps to make that happen. Let's put Nico in and take Brown out. 4K, Calvin Austin, Mike Williams. I like a lot of these receivers better than I do the expensive running backs, just based on the injury situations that they're dealing with. Hollywood Brown, though, is the most interesting to me. It's very rare that you're able to get like a talent like that. Let's see what his ownership is. Looking at a projected ownership of under 1%. So I'm not buying that, but Hollywood Brown should get under 10% on a 2-game slate, which sets us up nicely if he hits. So keep that in mind when you're building your lineups. And that's it for this episode. Make sure to hit the like button, give me the 30 likes. By the way, shout out to Bighorn Bison, providing me with this hoodie. They make very good seasonings. So if you're looking for seasonings, they do organic honey. They do all sorts of organic product and stuff like that. So make sure to check them out, bighornbison.com. They got a lot of cool, like ceramic art there too, with like different plate sets and cups and mugs and stuff like that. So very cool of them to hook me up with this shirt, and you're going to want to check them out. And their seasonings are really good. I use the like the main one for just about everything that I grill, and I grill pretty much every day. That's the salt, pepper, and garlic one. So definitely a site worth checking out if you guys are into grilling your own food. They got a lot of good seasonings there, and a lot of good, like, just organic type of food and chocolate and stuff like that. So check those guys out, and make sure to hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. And I will see you guys later on.